and gentlemen, C-Innovations would like to welcome you to COVID-19 and addressing and surviving the aftermath in our communities. Today, I'm joined by an esteemed panel of guests who will talk to you about our goal today, which is to make sure that we address questions and concerns that we've noticed that some of our colleagues have, some of the people in our communities have, and as well as looking at the issues and steps that we've taken to move forward and to think about how we're going to address some of the concerns as we move into a post-COVID world. My name is Dr. Moshe Lewis, and I'm a practicing clinician here in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'd like to take this time now, without further ado, to introduce first Dr. Conrad Brown. Please tell the guests about yourself and what you do, and a little bit about C-Innovations also.
Oh, okay. Well, greetings to everyone. As Moshe said, my name is Dr. Conrad Brown. I'm a native who was born and raised in New York City, and I have been there for the majority of my life until I started moving and relocating to the various states, and that was due to the inquiry for my experiences in emergency medicine and also for building projects and project management for emergency departments. My background predominantly is in emergency as well as in trauma centers, both working in community and academia facilities, level 1 and level 2 trauma centers. I am the founder and the CEO of C-Innovations, a consulting healthcare company. I am also a corporate director for emergency department in a large healthcare system. Now, C-Innovations, in terms of healthcare management, is a company where we go to be able to do a full assessment of the facilities in terms of whether their readiness for survey, meeting regulatory requirements, post-survey in terms of addressing any type of opportunities for improvement. We also work with project management building in terms of building emergency departments, freestanding emergency departments, anything related to project management, quality care initiatives. Also, we work with growth and staffing development as well. Turnaround time and metrics is also a big focus, and also helping the facilities become nationally accredited. And that is in terms of being chest pain certified, trauma designation, stroke accredited, and so forth in that nature. So we run the full gamut from the beginning, ground up, all the way to fruition of first grant opening date.
Sure. Well, gosh, emergency departments definitely have been in the news and front and center with respect to essentially our very first line of defense. I'm also delighted to have David Elgarico with us today. Please tell the guests about yourself and some of the things that you do and the perspectives you bring.
Good morning. My name is David Elgarico. I'm the CEO of a hospital in the Pacific Northwest. I'm originally from South Carolina and worked my way up through the career ladder in various states across the United States, starting from the East Coast all over the West Coast. So I've had the pleasure of working in South Carolina, a little short time in Virginia, a couple of times in Texas, and a couple of times in California as well, now up here in the Pacific Northwest. So my role as CEO of a hospital, of course, is to make sure that we service the community. We provide these special services such as types of surgeries to something simple as emergency department. I say simple, is very, very not simple, far from simple. Yet at the same time, really to continue operations of a provider in the community through a hospital setting to make sure healthcare needs are provided, that that's something essential for the healthcare of our community. So I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that, and I'll turn it over to Moshe.
Sure, thanks so much. Sure, I mean, really understanding exactly how our hospitals are changing and responding to things and how they will move forward in the future has definitely been on a lot of the patients that I have on their minds in terms of coming back and things like that. So we'll certainly get into that. Ms. Mary Potter, will you introduce yourself to the guests and tell them about your background?
Good morning. My name is Mary Pender Greene, and I am a psychotherapist and an executive coach. I have spent all of my career in New York City, and basically I describe myself as someone who helps people with career as well as personal relationships. And the goal is to be able to help people to be their best self in both situations. The other part of what I do is I'm president and CEO of a company, a multiracial company, where we look at helping organizations to develop leadership with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And then it's also about relationships. And during this period, relationships are strained in every possible way because we, the providers, the people on this panel, anyone who's offering services is especially stressed at this point. And it's an unusual situation where the providers are equally as stressed and traumatized as the people that the services are being offered to. So I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to talking further about these issues.
Sure. Well, we definitely know you'll have a lot of tips for our guests. Last but certainly not least, Ms. Annalisa Stroop, please introduce yourself to the guests and tell them a little bit about what you do.
Okay, and thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here today. Again, my name is Annalisa Stroop. I am currently living in Birmingham, Alabama, but I am a native of Mississippi. It is at Mississippi State that I obtained my education as a licensed professional counselor. I have been in all facets of mental health for over 20 years. I am also a mother and a wife, and I'm a mother of 5 children. Their ages range from 20 to 16. That keeps me very busy, and I feel as if I get most of my counseling tips from just that. I have served on many EAP panels. I work with individuals and couples. About 7 years ago, I decided to branch out on my own and open my own private practice, I Hope Counseling Center. I do work with individuals and families still. The majority of my work is with corporations all across the state of Alabama. I also work with the military in training with pre and post deployment. I currently work as a critical incident debriefer with events that happen in our community. And recently, I also obtained my community health worker certification to work with people in end-of-life care and end-of-life choices and how that affects the minority population. I'm very excited to be here. I agree with Mary. We have very strained relationships, and I'm excited to hear what the accomplishments and what everyone can provide in our communities and bring what I have found with the people affected in our community as well. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Sure, absolutely. Definitely a well of information that exists within this group. And so we're going to jump right in. Dr. Brown, many people have said that the emergency department is at the doorstep of diagnosis. What types of things were you noticing that had to be done in terms of gearing up? And as we certainly head towards a post-COVID phase, what things are you all noticing now and sort of preparing for as you move forward to really continue to engage the public?
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of gearing up for the emergency department, number one is education. And that is education to the staff in preparation for the influx of patients that will be coming out of fear and also the unknown to the emergency departments. So that requires the supplies and equipment to be readily available on hand for the staff and educating them again on the donning and doffing of their particular equipment, which is PPE, personal protective equipment. Having the adequate amount of supplies there available, as I stated earlier, for that. Once that is done, then we had to decide how we're going to divide the emergency department from the well-being patients that's coming in, well-being meaning non-COVID-19 patients, versus the COVID-19, those who suspected they have it. You want to differentiate, keep them apart, because that helps prevent the spread, obviously, from that. So that in itself poses a challenge for most emergency departments. Once that's done and the patients start actually coming, and we started seeing the number of people coming in with their concerns, we had to establish the amount of patients and their family members that were allowed to enter into the building, because we did not want to further expose. So that's spreading around emergency departments across as to come in and establish what we call a surge plan. So a surge plan is developed in emergency departments to, number one, handle the influx. Number two, to put a visitation requirements or restrictions, I should say, for those that's coming in, where it got to the point where only the patient was allowed to come in, the visitors were not. And that in itself had to be explained to them so they would not have them become irate and say with their loved one, they're just dropping them off and just leaving them. No, it's because we're looking to take care of them and take care of you at the same time. So those type of things were put in place for that. And then of course the care and the treatment of them, having a proper room, isolation, it's another thing that has to be taken in to considerations. Most emergency departments do not have every room outfitted for negative pressure. So therefore we have to, what are we going to do in place for that? Testing is another issue they had to work with in terms of our lab services and being able to make sure, are we going to do tests in the emergency department? Do we have adequate lab supplies testing to do it? Or do we have to send it off site? So those various things had to be discussed. And that became a part of the hospital and the emergency department working jointly together with emergency management, because it's not operating in silo, it's a joint effort. So we put all the multidisciplinary teams together and had to come up with a plan in place. The other things in terms of the aftermath is still going to be, what do you do now? Do we relax, in terms of what you hear from the media, do we relax visitation? Do we have now still enough supplies to do testing of those that's coming in place? Communication with the primary care physicians in the community, because to determine whether they have their patients coming or they're going to do it themselves, and so forth of that nature. So that's just a little piece of what is going on right now for that emergency department.
Sure. I think that gives a really unique perspective, because many families may have felt that there wasn't time, like you said, to really spend with their family members, or even afraid to come. And really understanding the challenge that emergency departments face, I think is critical for people to understand that it was being done for the patient safety and also for the visitor safety. Mr. Algarico, you have a more global perspective, perhaps, with respect to a lot of the operations that a hospital or a large organization has to undertake. What types of measures, picking maybe just a couple of things that may have been unique, were taken, or that you felt you had to make a key decision about as an organization, and likewise going forward, some critical decisions perhaps that you all are making about the future?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Well, in a hospital setting, typically the way, if we go back, think big picture here of the American healthcare delivery system, most hospitals as a business generate revenues through surgeries. And during this unprecedented time, hospitals have been asked to not do surgeries or procedures unless they're emergency. So on a clinical care perspective, now we have patients who are coming to the emergency department who otherwise would not have come because of these delayed procedures, these delayed surgeries. And in a sense, their healthcare conditions have gotten worse over time. So some have come to the emergency department out of need, and others actually have delayed coming because they're scared now. So what we're seeing in the community is people are just scared to come to the hospital because of news coverage. And it's not the news fault. It's when people need healthcare, where do they go, right? They first go, as Dr. Brown mentioned, in the emergency department, and they end up in a hospital setting. So there's a natural human sense of fear that if someone doesn't want COVID, they don't want to go to the hospital. Now, as I say that, know that hospitals have done every part that they can, following CDC guidelines, following the World Health Organization, following infection prevention measures as set forth by, say, the Joint Commission and also CDC, that the environment is clean, or keeping it exceptionally clean as much as possible. Other considerations coming into effect are, as a business, revenues, from a business perspective, revenues go down, then it's really hard to keep a business going. So many hospitals across the country, as you've probably read and seen, have either furloughed employees or done layoffs. Unfortunately, it's not something that, as a business perspective, business owners want to do, but it's something that is done out of necessity. Now, then you go on the nuances of what's the difference between a layoff and difference between a furlough. Yet the bigger picture is here is, for a hospital to provide care, they need employees in the hospital, right? And to have employees in the hospital, they need to be paid. And to be paid, they need to generate revenue. The downside of all of this is, in terms of balancing considerations, what services do the hospital have to continue to be able to provide the care the community needs, and to be able to have the employees in the hospital to do them. So it's a balance. And we're seeing across the country, whether it's rural or non-rural or in the big inner city metropolitan areas, different impacts, different rates of infections by COVID are sort of setting the tone and precedence in those different communities. Now, you asked about the future. One thing we're considering the future now across the states different governors are putting timelines of when hospitals can do elective surgeries again. Elective meaning non-emergent. As you can imagine, there's a long list. Many surgeons have a list of patients they want to get in. And it's now it's the approach of hospitals looking at, okay, we open the doors, the flood's going to come in, and it's impossible to do hundreds of surgeries in one single day. It's also impossible to allow every single surgeon on staff for the larger facilities to do their elective procedures and surgeries. So now you see leaders coming together, clinicians coming together, and putting together a systematic way to where it's even and fair to have all patients seen over a short period of time. And in the same sense as that happens, the hospitals then are looking to employees that, hey, I know I called you off for a furlough, for example, can you please come in? We've got patients to take care of, and these employees are flocking back to the hospital to come back. Other areas, as I mentioned that, other areas around the country, employees who were, say, furloughed, for example, are enjoying, as odd as it sounds, or enjoying the paychecks at home that they're getting for unemployment. And some are, strangely enough, electing not to come back to work because they want to continue unemployment. That, I would say, is sort of an unexpected challenge that some hospitals are seeing across the country and that we're dealing with, again, during this unprecedented time.
Sure. Well, definitely, we appreciate those types of insights. Ms. Mary Pendergard, both of our colleagues really hit at two, or at least certainly I can think of one key element that was in common, and that's this sense of fear. And part of our goal today was to really sort of address that. And I remember when we were talking beforehand, we talked about resiliency. What are some of the types of things that you feel are important for people to really be comfortable confronting and maybe discussing their fears, but also maybe even being able to combat them in this crisis that we face?
So thank you. The most important thing here is to recognize that fear is a natural part of what happens. This is a pandemic like we've never seen before. And so in essence, acknowledging that I am afraid, and also acknowledging that trauma plays a major role, that the thing about trauma that makes it unique is that each person is impacted by trauma based on their trauma history. So people who have had more extensive trauma have more fear and concern than people who've had less trauma. But in either case, when you think of it, everyone is impacted. So what that means is that people are more sensitive than usual, people are more on edge than usual, but most of all, people all worry about dying. Bottom line, that when each of you talked about hospitals and the fact that people are staying away from hospitals for fear that they are going to be impacted, then that means that they're at home feeling anxious about every cough, every sneeze, every interaction that they have with other people. And oftentimes, especially in communities of color or poor communities where they might not have as much space. So that what that means is that people, especially in New York City, where the space is smaller, people don't have large homes with backyards and front yards and places that they're able to go out during the course of the day. So that means that you've got lots of people who are frightened, are not able to talk about what it is that they're feeling, and basically confined in small spaces in conflict with each other. That's a part of what happens with the fear. And then there are people who are going to work on a regular basis because they are frontline people, and they worry about coming home and possibly infecting or impacting 3 generations that's living in their home. It could be grandma, it could be younger children, it could be parents, etc. But as David mentioned, people are furloughed. And so that means some people are furloughed and they're not able to work, or they've lost their job because they are doing what we describe as gig economy. So that in essence, lots of millennials are working in multiple jobs, so that they might be in theater and in the restaurant industry. And my office is in Midtown Manhattan, right 1 block from the theater district. What that means is that I have lots of people that work in theater, and as a second gig, they work in a restaurant, which is very common for millennials at this point. So they're especially impacted by the economy and what's going on. But also millennials too are very, unlike many generations before them, they're not committed to a specific organization over the long haul. So that means that they work multiple contract, freelance type jobs and part-time, which makes them more vulnerable in a different kind, in an economic way. And so they're also not used to following the rules as many boomers might be. And so in essence, when you say to them that you should stay home, and they hear on the news on a regular basis in the past that older people are at risk, not younger people. And basically, the message has been unclear in a variety of ways. So what we have then is a focus on the fact that you have multiple generations in a home. You have some people that are going out because they're frontline employees, essential personnel. And then you have people who've lost their jobs. So New York has a very large amount of differing ways of handling the pandemic, but underneath it all is the fear that everyone has of being impacted themselves and impacting the people that love each other. But the most important thing that we need to keep in mind is that when you're sensitive in this way, people are on edge. People say and do things that are hurtful to each other. People are doing things often to soothe themselves that might not be the best thing. I hear about lunchtime cocktail parties and cocktail parties that go on all day, and the amount of food that's consumed that's soothing type of food. All of those things are things that people do to get through the day. And so our goal is to help people to come to terms with the fact that what we do during the pandemic is going to impact what happens after the pandemic. So a part of what I'd be happy to talk about a little bit later is about what we need to do to be able to be our best selves and to come out of the pandemic in the best possible way. Because the one major gift of the pandemic is that we have unexpected time. Most of us have some unexpected time that we wouldn't have had. How we use that time is going to greatly impact what comes next.
Sure, I like that concept. Ms. Stroop, you bring also a unique perspective in dealing with populations that I'd love you to get more into some of the things that you're seeing from a veteran side, and then even I know as well as being a teacher. So could you share some of the things that you're seeing and some of the unique perspectives that you have?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I am seeing is the social disconnect. People are experiencing loss in a lot of different ways that we've really never experienced before. In my own personal life, I have a son that is currently in basic training. One devastating loss for me is that we will not be able to travel to see his graduation. These monumental events are things that we look forward to, things that we strive toward, and we get excited about, and the excitement that comes with these events feed us, they energize us. That's the reason why we get up in the morning. My daughter also is missing her high school graduation ceremony, her prom. And although I have seen in our community people coming together in a lot of different ways to make up and take up slack for these losses, it's still very hurtful and devastating to them. These are things you aren't able to get back. You only experience once. But I have seen that population just really understanding and surprisingly moving through this better than I thought that they would, probably better than have been moving through the fact that I won't be able to see my son. My niece has had to postpone her wedding. Everything was ready to go, from the flowers to the catering to the stationery, and that has been put off. In terms of veterans and just military service members and their families, I'm hearing more and more about families having to prolong the reuniting of them and their service member. And all of these things are causing great loss with people that we've never really thought about. We think of loss as death and divorce, and maybe, although we are experiencing loss of jobs, but we don't think about the things that we work towards every day and get excited about. Even simple things like perhaps maybe going on a short vacation or spending time with family. Some of the other things, I've worked a little while in the hospice industry, is really plaguing people, not being able to see their family members that are in assisted living and nursing homes. And I have a family member that her father is very ill in the nursing home, and he has no understanding of why his daughter is not able to come and see him, and just the trauma that brings to people, watching in their own lives, but watching their family members and friends having to experience family members in the hospital, Conrad, as you mentioned, that are sick. Although they understand the purpose behind it, it's so difficult to deal with that loss or that inability to be there to comfort. We're comforting beings, and we need to feel needed. We need to feel like we feel that space for people, and the inability to do that has had a great effect on people, at least in my area. And people are watching these things and reading these things on all types of social media, on our news, and it is negatively impacting people in a great way.
Sure. Well, your humanity and empathy certainly come across, and I think we've got a great panel here to sort of really jump, as Ms. Mary said, into some of the tips and solutions and resources that are available. With that, I'm going to turn to our CEO, Mr. Algarico. What might be 2 or 3 of the unique types of things, whether they be something simple or maybe larger, that have at least even come out on the table as some type of way to embrace the community, be that the frontline caregivers, some of the workers that may be coming back, and or the community that you'll have thought about or maybe even trying to implement?
Sure, Dr. Lewis. I'd say it's almost going back to the basics. And in this sense, it's something simple as, first thing I'd share is be kind. During these times, you're seeing people out in the grocery stores because they're going out of necessity, and as mentioned earlier, they're in the community, they're out in the grocery store, and they're still scared, right? So when people are on edge, if you look at your, let's go back to the human brain, human emotion. In times of fear, people tend to revert back to the very early senses of being human, right? So it's very easy to be very mean and unkind to someone and not even realize you're doing it. So I'd say just as simple as be kind. Another thing to consider as we go through this, as mentioned earlier, this is unprecedented times for all of us. So having said that, we're also learning about what this is. We're also learning what this means for us moving forward in the future. We're also learning that this is our new norm. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. So as a result, we have to adapt, we have to learn. And in that process, we're given guidelines. We're given guidelines that change. So we may learn one thing today, and tomorrow's completely different. So as we say, follow the guidelines, we also need to be adaptive and mindful that some of the things we're asked to do, they're going to change. And we have to trust that they're changing. The guidelines we're given today may change tomorrow, but it's for the better. It's because we're learning something more and different every day. And finally, I'd say, take care of yourselves. That also means that if you need healthcare, don't put it off. If you're allowed to go and receive the healthcare early, the earlier you get it, the better. So it's okay to come to the hospital. Most hospitals, I'll share this, that have any COVID positive patients or suspected patients, most hospitals already put in processes where if you have someone who's got the signs and symptoms, they're separated from everyone else in the entire hospital. They also have staff who are going to take care of you, and they take care of you only. They're not going to take care of other patients who have signs and symptoms. So even people, your caregivers, are segregated from the very beginning. So as a patient, if you're considered what we call a positive pending patient or even a COVID positive for sure, and you're confirmed positive, you're going to see caregivers, and they're the same caregivers the entire time, and you don't see any patients the entire time you're in the hospital. So know that measures like that are put in place for the safety of everyone. So those are my few things I like to share, just to suggest the question, Dr. Lewis. So thank you.
Sure, good. In the simplistic, we can certainly find things that are gargantuan and that we can all sort of implement and be reminded of. Dr. Brown, from your perspective, maybe there's some things that you all have also taken to task. Maybe they're simple and maybe they're larger in the EDs, or a message that you feel you've been communicating to staff. What might be some of the pearls of wisdom that you're trying to impart?
Oh, yes, Dr. Lewis. One is definitely tying into what Mr. El Guerico stated, and that is, again, ensuring that the public, when they come in there, that they are not to be fearful of contracting what they perceive to be an easy issue to do. And that's not, because we have all steps to be able to take care of that. But the bigger part of that is the community itself, who have the fear of actually even coming to the emergency department to seek their care. And how it's affecting that and could affect them is that many are staying home because of the shelter in place, and their interpretation meaning I should not leave my house. And so because of that, those who have chest pain are not coming in. Those who have signs and symptoms of strokes are still staying home. The diabetics who need to be seen, those individuals who have chronic conditions, hypertension. So they say, well, I'll double up on my medication because I'm going to stay home. And then we now have further acute problems when they actually do come to the emergency department. Some will come in, unfortunately, in worse acute stages, dying because they did not move forward with doing that, doing their own stay-at-home remedies and taking medications and treatments and so forth, as opposed to coming in to the emergency departments. Granted, a lot of patients do use it as their primary care facility for various reasons, unable to get an appointment or not able to even get a primary care physician. But the fact is that we are there for them. So the biggest thing that we have to try to get out now to the community is that we are still open 24/7 to take care of you regardless. Do not stay home if you are sick or ill. Now, having said that, because of the lot of caps that's been put on for the COVID-19, because they come in different levels, is that if you have if you have the fever, the cough, the chills, and the respiratory discomfort, that was the big emphasis placed on coming into the emergency department. So all of the other type of symptoms and all the other types were not discussed. So therefore people thought, well, I need to stay home because I did not meet that list of criteria that was just suggested. Well, that is not the case. And so now we have to get the message out to that. Well, no, we were addressing that component, but there's the other aspect of it as well. So that's what we are facing and working on doing. And that's all across the country. We're working on getting the public knowledge and awareness to combat.
Sure. Ms. Stroop, some pearls and some ideas too that you may be finding. You brought up a lot of really great points in ways that people have senses of loss that may not necessarily always be in the exact physical or tangible. Are there some tips or resources that you think are very good for people to be aware of as they're experiencing various forms of change at this time?
According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of our most important emotional needs is certainty. And that seems to be the problem with a lot of these large events and losses that people are experiencing. They have no certainty. As I tell my clients sometimes, they need someone to fill in the blanks. When can I have this event? When can we redo? Will this ever end? And so one of the things that I have really tried hard to work with people is that cognitive behavioral distortion, their faulty thinking. They're really, because we're at home sitting a lot, or without the normalcy of our life, we're thinking in ways in which it's very harmful. So one of the very first things that I try to encourage people to do is create a self-care plan. What do I need to do to take care of me? Because we know that prolonged stress, prolonged negative thinking has great negative impacts on our body. And that's the last thing that we need in this pandemic, is to lower our own immune systems by way of decreasing our ability to deal with stress and making our bodies vulnerable. So what does the self-care plan look like? And for each person, that's different. From the single mom that is not thinking about really the disease, she's thinking about, how am I going to feed my children? How am I going to house my children? From the parent that's taking care of their aging parents, how do I care for my parents and not risk making them sick? So we start with that self-care plan, and that may be, how are you sleeping? What is your sleeping habits? What's your shutdown mode look like at night? Are you exercising during any of this? A lot of people that I have found are really discovering that I'm at home, I have all the opportunity to take care of myself, but I'm paralyzed. I almost feel like I'm in just shutdown mode. And so what we've discovered is what you think on a daily basis impacts how you behave. And so I've really tried to focus people on their thinking, paying attention to what they're thinking on a daily basis, being mindful, thinking about what you're thinking, adding that as part of their self-care plan, not just mindlessly thinking through the day. And if the way you're thinking is negative, in the way that we determine that is your feelings are going to follow. Feelings follow suit from a thought. Is I try to get them in some type of exercise daily, thinking about what they're thinking about and challenging those thinkings. Is how I'm feeling getting me, or how my thinking getting me the way I want to feel. Also included in that self-care plan is just breathing. When people become stressed, they tend to take very shallow breaths, and we all know that our brains need that oxygen. And so just reminding ourselves, as David said, those very basic things. I need to breathe. I need to take very deep breaths. I need to be mindful of what my body is telling me. And so exercising those really basic things in their self-care plan. The other thing is and these are times that we have to be okay with not knowing. And that's one of people's hardest challenges is just not knowing and not making any knee-jerk reactions during that not knowing. Asking yourself, what is immediate? What things can I control? What things are out of my control? And being okay with that. For myself, not focusing on the problem. Again, which goes back to our thinking. I have to remind myself daily, stop focusing on maybe what I don't have, stop focusing on the fact that I may not be able to do this or that, but look at what I do have. One of my favorite things, and I remind people of this daily, is just seeing, as Mary said, people walking in their neighborhoods, people taking time with family members that maybe they've disconnected from. We're having to talk to each other more. We are getting out and becoming creative again. The busyness of life has stolen some of that from us, and finding that creativity. There's a lot of groups in our community that are making masks, that are volunteering at food banks and helping the communities and serving our communities. And so those things have been very nice for me to reflect on, not just what is going wrong in the community, and just avoid staying stuck. find things to do, look forward, make that map in your self-help plan or your self-care plan. Make out what, at this time of the year, we're typically looking forward to how am I going to vacation? How am I going to take time for myself? Still do those things. Don't avoid not doing what you typically do. Stay as close to a routine as possible and stick to doing the things that we know that we did prior to all this. One of my favorite sayings is do the same thing in the dark that you did in the light. And eventually we'll get back out to that light. But those are some of the things that I have found very helpful.
Sure. Well, we definitely appreciate that. And in the simplicity from Mr. Algarico, being kind, from Dr. Brown, not forgetting to take care of your health, and from you, Ms. Stroop, the concept of breathing, which, like I said, is so basic, but breathing in really slowly and deeply, and then breathing out also very slowly and deeply. I know I promised our viewers, and we said we would do this with a tangible resource. I'm reminded that Ms. Mary has a video that she would like to share. And can you set that up for us a little bit? Tell us why you chose this and how you feel it may be helpful and appropriate.
Well, thank you. I'm really very touched by all of what everyone is sharing, and it makes it even more important that we're thinking about how are we doing personally, because our emotional health impacts everything else. And we can't be our best self when we're not checking in emotionally. How am I feeling? And how does the way that I feel impact the relationships that I have with other people? So a part of what helps to get us through and past this is working on the fact that we do not have to be alone, and that we should not see it as only the people in my house that I can be connected to, but it feels extremely important that we are kind, respectful, and most of all, patient with ourselves and with other people, and not expect that we're going to be as good as we might when we're not in this crisis. But the thing that gets us through, first of all, is to recognize that it's important to have fun every day. In the midst of a crisis, you can have fun. It's important to laugh every day. It's important to connect with other people. And most of all, it's important to do things that soothe us. And music is at the core of what soothes me and lots of other people. So I want to offer a video piece that we call a ray of sunshine. We're looking for a ray of sunshine every day to be able to help us get through this crisis and beyond. So please join me in enjoying a ray of sunshine.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. So just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. When you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
Sure, we love that. And if you might tell us who the doctors are. I'm presuming they look like maybe ER doctors or like they work in the surgical suite.
Yes. So they are a surgeon. It's a surgeon.
Awesome.
And it's so important to recognize that no matter what role you have and station in life, there are lots of other things that you are interested in or may be interested in that we might not normally do. So the reason that I thought sharing a surgeon who's singing was that means that it allows us to think beyond what the role is. The other thing is that on my website, on a regular basis, we have what we consider a ray of sunshine, where there are things that are 2 to 5 minutes thereabout that you can look at and just enjoy. Because in the midst of your busy day, no matter how busy you are, and especially if you're connected to caring for people during this pandemic, it's wonderful to be able to take out a minute or two. That was 1.5 minutes. And so it livens your soul, because in essence, we are irritable, we are frustrated, we are anxious, and we're fearful. But when we're able to get support from other people, it makes it possible for us to increase the connections that we have with each other. And most of all, it helps us to go through another day and have resiliency as a result of enjoying moments, not weeks at a time. We don't have to go on vacation. We'd like to, but being that we can't right now, it's important to be able to find pleasurable moments during the course of our day and our work.
Sure. Well, as we were coming near the end, I want to make sure that we have a moment to try to get a little bit more personal. So I'm going to start and ask that each of you all talk about some of the things that you literally are doing, maybe with your family, or ways that you're coping with all of this. And for me, as a physician, I'm getting, like many of you all that deal with people on the front lines, a lot of calls and a lot of concern. And also, as some of you pointed out, people looking for a sense of direction. That came in the form of a call that lasted 2 hours during the middle of the night, just before we went to taping, from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. From somebody with significant anxiety, and that essentially left their company, and it's a company that they started just a few years ago. So to say that that's created a lot of stress in many people's lives is an understatement. So for myself, one of the things that I've done is to literally take off my shoes, and you can do this anywhere. And for those that feel comfortable in their own home, or if they do have a yard or some grass or carpet, even inside the place that they live, just closing my eyes, as Ms. Stroop said, and taking a deep breath in. I've been trying to do this sometimes with my children as well, just to literally feel, the earth beneath our feet. I think that's a famous song. And really just closing the eyes allows you to just really sort of just breathe, as she was saying, and breathing in and breathing out just for a few seconds can bring such a sense of calm. And so I'm going to turn first to Ms. Stroop and just ask something that you may have incorporated that may be personal as a resource or a strategy that helps to cope and help us get through this aftermath, something you may be doing. What might that be?
One of the things that I neglected to speak about earlier with the people that I work with, if the individual has some type of spiritual life or a faith that they believe in, I certainly encourage them to lean into that. And for myself, I do. And so I have found that that is a source of great comfort for me. It is for our family. It is a reminder that I even send my kids that are not with me right now, that they can lead into their faith. So that's one thing. The earth under your feet is great. I love the sun on my face. So I try to get outside somewhere and just let the sun sink in and soak up some good vitamin D. It just seems to warm my soul, warm my skin, and it just makes me a lot happier. The third thing that I have done is we have one child that's left home, and he has kind of been the one that's been left out, and so he will frequently say, "Hey, Mom, come play Call of Duty with me," and that has never been one of my favorite things. But for once, I say, "Okay, don't know what I'm doing," and he sits and he laughs at me and makes fun of me. So I figure that I can do at least that. So we do find great pleasure in that.
Sure, good. I love the realness. That is the world that we live in, certainly with younger ones, and going outside of our norm, just like we said with the surgeon. Mr. Algarico, tip in your own personal life that you may have incorporated or are trying to utilize as a way of coping and dealing with stress and anxiety.
Oh, sure, Dr. Lewis. Thanks for asking. I've got my wife and I have a 10-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. So as you can imagine, having a dog, got to walk the dog. So we've expanded our route, and it's at least a mile long walking our dog. And our son will either bring a basketball or bring a volleyball, and we'll literally play during the walk. And then there are a few times, because our dog's going on walks 2 or 3 times a day, and extended walks at that. That's sometimes just me and my wife taking our dog out at least once a day, just the two of us. So me being Filipino, years ago, I learned a little bit more about my roots and my culture, and I learned Filipino martial arts. In the art of Filipino martial arts, there's also something called stick fighting. So I've got pairs of sticks from 24 to 28 inches, sometimes a couple pairs of 32-inch sticks. And I'll take a pair with me, and I'll do a lot of combinations. It's similar to it's similar to martial arts movies where you see someone with 2 swords and doing combinations. So very similar movements. I'll just do that, and we're walking our dog, and I'll see people just looking at me, and then I notice they're not looking away. So I realized, I think I'm on stage. I'm start performing for these people, even though it's like a 5-second performance, because around the corner they're gone. But that's my little way of relaxing with the family and myself.
Sure, that's excellent. Ms. Mary, if you would feel comfortable sharing as well, something that you may have incorporated into your own life or that you're doing now.
Thank you. So my husband and I are sheltering at home together, even though we're both working during the course of the day. But we go on walks, not every day, but we do go on walks. And one of the things that we do every day is to have breakfast overseeing our backyard, where we have a variety of different kinds of plants and lots of animals that come running through at different times. And what has been wonderful this past month is to watch our cherry tree bloom and watch the how full it's gotten. It's starting to fall now, and there are lots of cherry blossoms that will need to be swept up, and we're going to have to figure out who's going to do the sweeping. But the other thing that I do personally is that I've created a chart that's called Mary's Mini Habits. And I'm doing a variety of things every day. I'm doing 1 plank every day and trying to see how much longer can I extend it. And I am riding my Peloton every other day. For having to increase it, bike riding is something that I like. I'm not able to do at this moment in time. I'm not comfortable in doing that, but I'm trying to make my legs stronger so that as soon as we are free to be able to go out and do that, I'd like to do that. And then the most important thing that I do daily is that I listen to books on tape. I am usually so busy, and there are things that I say that I want to do. And at this point, even if I'm tired by the amount of people that I'm speaking with and helping through this crisis, when I'm too tired to do anything else, I can sit on the couch and have someone read to me a book. And so that means that during this period, I've done 4 books in the last 7 weeks that I've been at home, big books that I normally wouldn't have the opportunity to do, but it soothes me. And I have a book that I do that is basically a meditation, and that's daily as well. It's only a couple of minutes, but it helps me through the day.
Sure. Well, I love the realness of really trying to take even bite-sized steps with some of these types of things, because I think they speak to the sincerity. That's right. We're not maybe experts at all of these things. And although it sounds like Mr. Algarico is definitely going to be somebody to watch out for on stage. And so we certainly can appreciate the sincerity of our efforts. And I like hearing the smorgasbord of options and things that you all have personally incorporated. Dr. Brown is head of innovations, and we definitely thank you for being able to put this great panel together. Share with the guests something more personal. They wouldn't know in the busyness of all the work that you do that you've incorporated into your life, that you're doing during this time to cope.
Oh, okay, Dr. Lewis. Yes, currently what we do is every day we take a family walk. So my wife and my 2 boys, well, they're teenagers actually, 17 and 13. We actually take a walk throughout the neighborhood where we actually have met more neighbors and seen people that we would not normally would have because of our schedules that we have currently. I'm commonly sometimes referred as the mayor of the neighborhood because I'm out there waving and speaking to individuals, and they start to know who I am. And my youngest son, who's very much involved in basketball, has gotten a chance to meet a former coach from football and basketball. And we now have, as a family, I should say, engulfed him into being part of with us, where we go and we meet with him every time that we take a walk. And in fact, he started walking with us as of last night. So that extended our walk to, like David was saying, to more than what we normally would walk that amount of time. And so that was great. I also have a love of grilling. I spend a lot of my time during the week. I grill more now than ever. Now, usually I would grill on the weekends, but now I'm pretty much grilling at least every other day, I would say, of all types of foods, and the family's looking forward to doing that as well. And it's a comfort for me. A lot of people think it's a lot of work. It is work, but I enjoy it. So it's a time for me to do that. I listen to a lot of gospel music. I incorporate that when I'm actually walking in the evenings as well. Not only just listening to gospel music, but also while we're walking, talking about subjects that we normally would not have enough time to sit down and just discuss in our walk that we do in the evening time as well. So that's a lot of it. And then I'm getting involved in little technical things around the house and learning. I'm spending time with my boys, father and son time, watching sports and other TV type shows, which normally I do not have the time for that. So that's welcome a lot because I can see the excitement with my sons when they come into the theater room and they sit down and, Daddy, we're going to watch this movie. I let them pick the movie we're going to watch, or we watch a sports event that's on related to whether it's in the past and we have to go on demand and find it or whatever, we do that. So that quality time is important. So enjoy it.
Sure, excellent. For those that feel comfortable, our viewers may want to be able to reach out to you, and perhaps you have a special way of having them do that. I'm going to start with Mr. Algarico. If someone has further questions or some direction they may want to reach out to you and things of that nature, what would you recommend?
Sure, I've got an email I'm happy to share. I'll have to spell it for you, though. It's david.elgarico@gmail.com. It's david.elgarico@gmail.com.
Excellent. And we'll make sure we display it as well. Miss Mary, you've been so kind with your thoughts. How can our viewers reach out to you if they would like to further up and follow up?
Thank you. I have a very extensive website. It's marypendergreene.com. And there are lots of goodies with regards to support for people during this time, as well as the rays of sunshine that I mentioned earlier. And as I said, I am a coach and a therapist. And my email address, mlpenderg@gmail.com. And I'm always available to offer support in any way that it might be possible. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for your time. Ms. Stroop, if you would have people reach out to you, what might be a good way?
Yes, they can contact me through my email, and that's Annalisa at ihopecounseling.com, ANNELIESE at ihope, small I, well, I guess it's all lowercase, ihopecounseling.com.
Sure, excellent. We'll be sure to display that. Myself, I'm a physician with a relatively unique name. My first name is spelled Moshe, M-O-S-H-E. Really enjoyed a fruitful and productive practice, being able to interface with people from all walks of life. I get to see a lot of veterans. Most afternoons are dedicated primarily just to seeing veterans and addressing some of the disabilities that they have. Of course, many have to shelter in place. And then during the week, we like to say that we see some of our working wounded and some of our worried well, because many times people have various concerns about what are going on that are rooted in the tangible. Like Dr. Brown said, they may have a specific symptom that they're coming in with. There may be some anxiety, and or they may actually have a pain. And so we try to direct them to resources such as yourselves in order to be able to get further assistance. So Dr. Brown, we'll end with you. What's a good way to reach out to you if people have questions and would like to follow up with Cinnovations?
Yeah, sure. In terms of following up with Cinnovations, we have our website at www.cinnovations, capital C N ovations, OVATIONS.com. Right. And then you can also reach me on my email, cbimc23@aol.com. And thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, a big thank you to all of you all for taking times out of your schedules. I know they may be just a slightly less hectic than normal, but for sure, I think it's a wealth of information that all of you all provide, and certainly believe that our viewers could benefit from an in-depth view or review of your websites and interfacing with you. So I hope that people will feel welcome to do that. And we also hope that we did provide some real tangible resources today to help people as they cope with COVID-19 and just also face the world as it should be, with a little bit more kindness, as was pointed out, a little bit more time to actually get to know our neighbors, and then also taking that moment to just breathe and relax, and even if necessary, feel comfortable leaning on one another as appropriate, and can certainly be, that can be very beneficial for us to say that it's okay to ask for help. So hopefully we've provided some of that assistance today, and also a ray of sunshine, and we thank you.